And I'm going to start the show off with a big ol' plug. Mark used to make fun of me for always plugging Kolkoa, the City of Lights, City of Angels festival, but that is coming up once again. And
French movies
in L.A. And in fact, you and Mark and I have all been on the jury in the past, and I moderate events almost every single year, and I just absolutely love this. So anyway, that begins next week. And it begins on Monday the 23rd and will run through, what is it? Is it the 30th? Goes all the way through the 30th at the Directors Guild of America on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. If you're around, come on down, get some tickets, see some good movies. I'm going to be moderating events on the 24th and the 26th, I believe. I got to lock that down a little bit, but I'm going to be moderating the Meet the Delegation.
Yeah.
And then also going to be doing a thing with Melanie Laurent, who has a new film. Great actress. Of course, everybody knows her from her films, but she's also a filmmaker and a very, very good director. So I've got a couple of things at Kolkoa. It's going to be a good week. Good week next week. And then in the meantime, we're also looking down the line at summer movies. And how do you think Infinity War is going to do?
Oh, well, money-wise, it's going to be fine. As a film, though, I don't know. The more I look at that big trailer...
So here's the question. Black Panther is now third highest grossing domestic film in history. It passed Titanic. It's now only behind Avatar and Star Wars: The Phantom or Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
So those are the only films ahead of it. It is now officially the most successful Marvel film ever. Does that bode well or poorly for Infinity War? Does that mean that it's going to carry over to Infinity War and push Infinity War into the stratosphere? Does Infinity War still have to deliver? Or
does Infinity War have to be at least as good,
Yeah.
or otherwise it's a failure?
Yeah.
You know.
Or are people now just or does it steal some of Infinity War's thunder? Are people going to feel like, I got my Marvel fix for the next 12 months. I'm kind of done. I don't need to see them all do that. I've seen the Avengers do their thing before. Because Black Panther was fresh.
Yeah. Whenever I think that, though, I turn out to be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm
just curious. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea, and I have no opinion. I think any of those are possibilities.
I feel the same thing about the all of the continuing releases of the various different Star Wars movie. For me, there's a diminishing return.
Oh
here.
man, is there ever?
Solo at con, and I'm like, but I'm not hyped to see. I'm not all that hyped about Infinity Wars.
Yeah.
Right? I get it. It's fine. I'm not really that kind of a fan anyway, but there is a time, definitely. The first Iron Man, dude, I was goofy to go see that movie.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Black Panther, a film which I thoroughly enjoyed for a whole lot of reasons, but I know that there was a whole lot going on in the culture that had to do with that too. Good movie, certainly a very, very good movie.
Let's give them credit. They marketed that thing beautifully.
Yeah.
Like let's honestly, a lot of these movies are all about the marketing. If you look at those top, let's just take the top four that we were just talking about. Okay, Titanic doesn't really need any promotion. It's about the Titanic.
Yeah.
The title alone sells it.
And of course, it came with Cameron as a director who was a celebrity director in and of
straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up. Avatar. Okay, and Star Wars, that goes without saying. It's back. It's been decades. That just made all kinds of sense. But Avatar was purely sold by the marketing. It's 3D, it's Cameron, it's sci-fi, and they just pumped that thing. They hyped the hell out of it forever, and it was not a very good movie, but the hype carried it. Black Panther, similar, but it's a good movie and heavily hyped. But they introduced the character in whatever it was,
the one right before,
in the Captain America film, the last Captain America. So you introduce the character, you tease people, so now they want to know more, which was like. That was like a plug buried inside another Marvel movie. It was brilliant.
And then, of course, you don't need the celebrity director Ryan Coogler, who a noted director, Fruitvale and whatnot, but not a celebrity director, but in a certain way a celebrity director, right?
Yeah.
Because he's this young black man, first one to do that, all that kind of stuff like that. So there's a certain amount of celebrity that's not necessarily attached to his name. And then, they a really good script.
Yeah.
just
and a great supporting cast too.
All the way around. Good work. Now, so the question will be: Infinity Wars. Will they be resting on the laurels of the? Everybody gets their joke. Everybody gets their moment. You know how when you get these big movies, right? And it becomes a battle of that. That wasn't going on in Black Panther.
Obviously, they need to maintain all those character tensions that have carried over, right? You got to have Cap and Iron Man still having their little deal, because they're far and away the two most interesting. Like, I don't really care what Hawkeye does. He could shoot a few arrows. It's meaningless to me.
Hawkeye.
For just Scarlett Johansson, just wear the black outfit, ride a motorcycle, do a few backflips. I don't care. It's all I need you to do. But I need Captain America and Iron Man to butt heads.
Hulk is angry.
Hulk is angry, and Thor still speaks like he's in a Shakespearean play and makes fun of people. So that's all fine. And Doctor Strange will do whatever he does. But yeah, ultimately, I think Thanos is going to matter. What Josh Brolin brings to Thanos, we have just hyped him. We saw it's been 8 years since they teased him at the end of that first Avengers film, and then we're obviously getting Thanos' daughters in the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's going to matter too, how that folds in. So all that has to work. So anyway, we're gonna have an interesting summer season. It's a lot of things in the mix. I'm really looking forward to Ant-Man, the next Ant-Man.
Yeah. For one thing, love me some Paul Rudd.
Yeah,
he's
and the idea of the Wasp.
The Wasp, right
there.
That's really. But Paul Rudd is like this accessible. He's the one who I feel like if I were one of these, guys, I wouldn't be the Black Panther king. No, they kick me out of Wakanda. What are you? No, get out of here. Tony Stark, billionaire. No good for that. Captain America, I'm not that earnest. That Ant-Man guy, I could be him. I could be just some dude in the Ant-Man suit. Doing his thing. That's my superhero.
And speaking of Paul Rudd, and we'll get into into DVDs here in a moment. But did you see the music video that Jimmy Fallon and Paul Rudd did for Tonight Show? Did you see this?
I don't think
it's the most bizarre thing in the world. Okay, so in 1980s, a lot of good music. If you're a child of the 80s, as I am, as we are, okay, you may remember there was a band called Go West.
Oh yeah.
And they had a hit called "The King of Wishful Thinking." And it's a fun video, but that song and that video faded away. For whatever weird reason, Jimmy Fallon and Paul Rudd, also being fans of the era and children of that generation, said, "Hey, let's remake that video." Frame for frame, character for character, shot for shot. Let's just remake the whole thing and put ourselves in. And they did. And it is, I urge you, go look up the video, the original video of King of Wishful Thinking, and then watch the Jimmy Fallon, Paul Rudd recreation of it. It is the funniest thing in the world. It is. And it's straight up straight. They play it straight. They just do crazy. Shot for shot, dance move for dance move. Everything is the same, except knowing that it's Jimmy Fallon and Paul Rudd, it just makes it so hopelessly hilarious. And it's such an obscure song to go and resurrect. I'm just amazed. Anyway, all right. Well, we're gonna dive in head first here. I've got 4 anime titles. Don't want to let the anime pile up as I have in the past. So 3 anime titles. Actually, let me take it back. All anime-related stuff. So 2 of them are live action-ish. 2 are anime, but it's the world of anime. So we're going to dive into this, and then I'm going to talk about something that is not anime, but which kind of links us over to new movies, because I truly don't know. I can't. I don't know. You'll understand in a moment. So for starters, the straight-up anime stuff. Let's see, the first one here they're both Sentai from section 23. The first one is Urara Meirochou, the complete collection, 12 episodes. This is this is one of those pixie type shows. It's magical, it's fantastical, but it's geared towards younger kids. And I'm actually starting to wonder if I shouldn't maybe expose my daughter to some of this, because I honestly think something like this she may actually enjoy, because it's got, the Meirochou is the town here, and the Chia is the Chiya is this cute little kind of woodling nymph character, and it's just this cool little world with these, with the cool little people and the creatures, and I want to say it's like Dusty's Treehouse, but nobody will know what I'm talking about if I say Dusty's Treehouse, because that's a Saturday morning show from a million years ago that has completely gone away. Everyone's going to go Google Dusty's Treehouse now, and you're going to be terrified that I even mentioned it. So never mind. Anyway, she's looking for her mom. It's a quest for mom. And it's just these cute girls with the big eyes and cute outfits, and I actually kind of think there's something very charming about it. Ajin, Demi-Human, is 12 episodes and 2 movies on 3 discs of something that is definitely not for kids. This skews very, very dark and very, very adult. It is unbelievably animated. This is just such intense animation. And you see why they would dovetail from a 13 episode show into 2 movies, because it has a cinematic dimension to it. So anyway, this is a sequel. This is technically Agent Demi-Human 2. I am not familiar with the first one. Don't feel like you even need to know anything about it. This is all espionage and spies and assassins, and all set against a really creepy apocalyptic backdrop. It is there's also a concept here that I don't quite understand, where he sort of like he can personally generate black matter, and anyway. You'll understand. It's a really a fascinatingly dark world that they've invented, and a lot of great twists and turns. Really well written, unbelievably well animated, and it's mystical, and it's cool. It's like, I don't know. It's like Mad Max meets Lord of the Rings in a James Bond environment. I don't know. There's no way to really do justice to it. A lot of really cool special features here. The opening animation without the credits. It's really you can appreciate the stature of the animation. It's really tremendous. We've talked about Garo in the past. We got another Garo here, which is live action, but of course part of the anime world. Red Requiem. It's like a notch beyond Power Rangers, and it gets pretty intense at times. It feels almost cheesy Power Rangery until it gets really, really dark and intense, and then you realize it's not for kids. The whole Garo thing. This is from Kraken Releasing, which definitely lives up to its billing. Only if you're a Garo fan. If you're already initiated into this world, you'll want to check this one out. Otherwise, it won't make much sense to you. Gintama is a live action thing now. It's live action in a really anime kind of way. There is just CGI they CGI'd this to the nth degree. We're doing a lot of these things now in Japan, where they are doing these live action adaptations of anime stories, but they're doing them in a really exaggerated acting style with really exaggerated costumes and lots of CGI. So it's really almost not even live action. It still has one foot still in the animated world. This is, of course, we've talked about this in the past. This takes place in feudal Japan, where aliens have invaded, and it's just, samurai have to submit to the aliens. It's just a whole weird alternate universe thing. But it lends itself to live action in a really curious way. And there are a lot of these kind of tongue-in-cheek, anachronistic, quasi-dramatic, pseudo-comedic samurai things that are part of, they're like part period and part genre in Japanese cinema. The Legend of Zipang was one of the first ones, and certainly one of my favorites. If you've never seen Legend of Zipang, you've got to see it. It's got a ninja who actually has to jam his hand into his chest cavity and break off one of his ribs because he has some kind of a device hidden inside one of his ribs. It's just so insane. It's amazingly cool. So anyway, this kind of falls into that world. This is Gintama. It all originated as a manga, it should be pointed out. So it's gone from manga to anime to live action. All right, Tim, we're now going to talk about new releases, and I'm going to start with a movie that has no business existing, absolutely no business existing. I had to review this on Film Week. I am just bedeviled by the fact that this is a thing. It's Surge of Power: Revenge of the Sequel. Now, let me set the table here. There was an original movie called Surge of Power about 10 years ago. And there's this guy who is not an actor and he is not a filmmaker. he's an attorney.
Yeah.
And he's a gay attorney. And he's an attorney who decided, and he represents, I think he does mergers and acquisitions or something, made a lot of money, but he decided there needs to be a gay superhero. And they're not giving me a gay superhero. So I, the wealthy gay attorney with lots of wealthy clients, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make my own movie about a gay superhero.
Yeah.
And
we're okay thus far, by the way.
Thus far, we're okay.
Thus far, we're solid.
I'm fine with this.
Yeah.
I'm really fine with this. It's we're good so far.
Good decision making so far.
Yeah. So he goes out and he makes his movie. He calls in a lot of favors, and he somehow convinces people who have no business being in this movie to be in it. The problem is, he's a terrible actor and filmmaker.
Yes,
he is terrible.
Now the decision making is not so good anymore.
But somehow it did well enough that he went and worked as an attorney for another 10 years or whatever, and then came out and did Surge of the sequel. And it's just dreadful. Yes, I get it. Nichelle Nichols shows up, and Eric Roberts is in this thing as the devil, and it makes no sense why any of these people should be in it. And the whole idea is that he's fighting his evil rival, who's very Lex Luthor-like, who also can't act, and somehow he's able to put. He goes to Comic-Con and he guerrilla. He completely photobombs, video bombs all of these celebrities at Comic-Con, and then cuts their tidbits in.
Yeah.
And then the ones that he can't photobomb at Comic-Con, somehow he convinces them to do riffs on their own persona. Like Reb Brown is in this thing, basically riffing on when he played Captain America. Now, that's going to make
TV.
that's going to make no sense to anybody who doesn't remember the 1991 or 88 Reb Brown television Captain America. If that is off your radar, and it's off the radar for all but about 7 people, Reb Brown showing up and making all of these tongue-in-cheek jokes about Captain America is going to mean nothing to you. Yeah. But it obviously means something to somebody. Anyway, Surge of Power, Revenge of the Sequel does not warrant the conversation that we have just had. I'll just tell you who else shows up in this thing. Robert Picardo, so embarrassing. Gil Gerard and Linda Blair play the parents of the villain. And
plainly, he has represented and done well for these people.
They worked for a day. They sat there and they worked for a day, and it's covered in like 3 shots. They're just on the phone trying to talk their son out of being a villain again. Yeah. It's just dreadful. And Lou Ferrigno and Bruce Vilanch show up. I don't know. It's on Blu-ray.
All of these people are into the will the paycheck clear period of their careers, and that happens to all of us.
I don't know what to make of this movie. Anyway.
But there it is. They work. So anyway, I have these lovely 4 movies Wade, that have this particular thing in common, which is interesting. This used to be a big deal back in the early 90s. This was a big deal, but on every one of these covers, every one of them are sort of hard-boiled, movies about mostly men doing stuff, and they're all standing there with guns.
Yeah.
On the cover of the DVD/Blu-ray box, Jason Momoa there with a gun. Then you got Taraji P. Henson with that gun. You got Cameron, Damian Dash, guns. Bruce Willis and Cole Hauser, guns. On the cover of these boxes of these movies, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. But that in and of itself is a thing.
Yeah.
Because you and I you've been around long enough to remember when that was a deal.
Yeah.
And people talk about that, particularly when they were putting black folks that looked a little gangy, a little gangish AFM, with guns.
Tons of those at AFM.
Oh, there was a whole thing there for a while. What was the Trespass? Was the name of the film? That was the real big deal about it. But anyway, now it's a pretty ordinary thing. Generally speaking, when you see it, though, the movie is just about as interesting as the cover. So what we have here is Honor Up from director Damian Dash. You're saying to yourself, I didn't know Damian Dash was the director. Well, neither did Damian. He knocks off a lot of these movies. Damian is a big old hip-hop producer from back in the day. This, though, is executive produced by Kanye West, stars Cameron. All of these are hip-hop guys. From kind of washed-up hip-hop guys, frankly. And this is a story about a drug dealer
That's novel.
And how he has to do this and has to do that, whatever. Commentary track with the producer, actor, and director Damien Dash. You know what is funny about these movies? They have an audience.
Yeah.
And that audience gets them and watches them, which is why these movies exist. I sit here and I make fun of them. But they
don't care.
No, they don't care because this movie's going to do just fine. For the $14 that it cost. Acts of Violence, Cole Hauser and Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis used to stand on covers like this, or on movie posters like this, with that smirk and that badge and all of that.
These movies used to the part that Bruce Willis is playing there. That used to be Cole Hauser's dad, Wings Hauser.
Yeah, I wrote a Wings Hauser movie. Whatever.
Yeah.
Wings, yes. Anyway, somebody gets kidnapped. Bruce Willis, Cole Hauser, they go get him. Blah 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 blah. Shoot. There's a 1967 Camaro SS in this movie, and it's the one damn thing to watch. Violence there. Jason Momoa is going to be who's he?
Aquaman.
Aquaman coming up. Saw him in one of the movies.
In Justice League.
He's
not the Aquaman I grew up with. The Aquaman I grew up with was a very nice blonde Aryan gentleman who talked to seahorses and was very sweet. He was not a tattooed badass Polynesian dude with a hair who
mostly does stuff on land. There's not a lot that happens in the water. Anyway, in the build up to all of that, Jason knocked out 2 or 3 films. Because why the hell not? Get paid for a little while. This is one of those. Anyway,
I like Jason Momoa.
He's a fun guy. Actually, he was in a great series. One of the series from the Stargate universe. There are a whole bunch of series in the Stargate universe films, and he was really good in one of those.
If he can, honestly, we're in a moment now where we lost our action heroes of the 1980s. You remember
big muscle guys.
Stallone and Schwarzenegger and
a few other ones, and some ancillary ones,
and Bruce Willis and Van Damme and
certainly Chuck and some of them were martial arts, but
all the guys who are in the Expendables movies now, they all faded away, and there was nobody that really took their place. We kind of lost that. Like Tom Cruise is maybe the only one who's still around, but we've kind of moved to a new place. Dwayne Johnson is doing it now.
Yeah,
he's doing it. He's the only one. I think that Momoa could enter that.
He might take up a slot,
Look, Liam Neeson is still doing these things.
He's now almost 70.
Liam Neeson is,
And John Cena decided to go with comedy, which was a good choice. Rather than just knocking guys out.
For sure.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was always really funny, decided to go with knocking guys out, and he's gone.
Yeah.
So go with funny. And Dwayne Johnson, frankly, did the same thing. He still knocks guys out, but he's mostly funny.
If Momoa can learn to be funny, if he can do that,
do it, baby. Yeah. Taraji P. Henson, the gal with the gun on this cover, along with the wonderful Danny Glover, who we were talking about a little while ago. Danny Glover. First saw Danny Glover, paid attention to Danny Glover in a movie called Witness.
Yep.
Harrison Ford movie, just wonderful movie. Danny Glover has a small part in that movie. Absolutely chilling. And I'm sure I had seen him before. And then, of course, he's in Places in the Sun.
Yeah.
Where he's John Malkovich, Sally Field, where he really made his career in that movie. But that's how long I've been paying attention to Danny Glover. He's in this movie, Proud Mary. This movie was okay, but it was they made a mistake in the film. And here's what the mistake is. They did not motivate this hit woman, this black female hit woman going out taking it. They didn't motivate her right. This movie should have had more to do with something like Gloria. And I'm talking about the Gina Rollins Gloria.
Yeah.
I think Sharon Stone did one in the middle 90s or something like that. Hers was okay, but that Gina Rollins Gloria was a fantastic movie. When she ends up with this Puerto Rican kid, and these mob guys are after her, and she's not the motherly type, and it's kind of like she likes her mob people actually, but it's a situation where she's not gonna let these people kill this kid. More or less, we get around to that's what's going on in this different context, but it's Taraji and this kid. But Taraji don't even seem to like this kid. It's like, and so I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing about it. Anyway, special features: Mary's World, the beginning to the end. A look if looks could kill, behind the scenes kind of stuff. Proud Mary.
So from the sublime to the ridiculous, I'm going to actually start with the ridiculous and then go to the sublime. New DC Universe movie, this is animated, is Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay, on 4K with HDR. And does it warrant it? An original DC animated movie on the Suicide Squad in 4K. Does it warrant it? Yeah, it does actually.
Interesting.
Looks really, really good. Looks terrific. Comes with Movie Anywhere for your digital locker. And here's what I like about this: it's better than Suicide Squad.
Well, yeah, the narrative is already better.
It's I mean, essentially, yes. There's a whole new mission that they've got to go off to, and it's a whole where they get sent by the warden out to put the team back together, and they introduce a couple of new figures: Copperhead, Bronze Tiger. I'm not really familiar with them as villains. What I liked about this is Killer Frost fascinates me as a villain.
Yeah.
Largely because I am a fan, despite all of its flaws, of The Flash.
Me too.
And so whenever I see Killer Frost, I make the connection back to The Flash, right? Because
television's The Flash we're talking about.
Television Flash, because Killer Frost is a big deal there. Yeah. And so I enjoy them. Of course, Harley Quinn, and there is something about Suicide Squad that is certainly quite fun. And I think in terms of the spirit of the comic Suicide Squad, this is more faithful, and it is really well done. So it's a good 4K.
It's funny to me that Suicide Squad was always a funnier series, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of the content of the stuff, the quipping, it was always funny. Yet Deadpool is funnier than Suicide Squad.
It sure is.
Then that previous movie, I just never got that. I'm like, they're not paying attention.
Suicide Squad should have been that.
You got Will Smith right here. He's right there. He does that.
Yeah.
I mean, he does it certainly. He was doing it a long time before Ryan Reynolds started doing it. And I don't know. It just didn't work. Didn't work at all. Yeah.
Well, here's the sublime. The Last movie star was starring Burt Reynolds and a little bit of Chevy Chase. So here's why this is interesting. Burt Reynolds' career has gone in all kinds of interesting paths.
Yeah.
And Burt Reynolds was legitimately one of the biggest stars in the world for a number of years.
Yeah.
If you go back to that I forget which study it was, which survey, but there was an annual survey, biggest movie star in the world. And that went on for a number of years. And it was basically Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood trading places year after year throughout the 70s. And Burt basically owned that decade. He just came out, guns blazing, and with Deliverance, and then Smokey and the Bandit.
Every genre of movie that you can think of, actually, and because the box that they tried to put Burt in, is that funny Smokey, but no, Sharky's Machine.
Yeah.
I mean, Sharky's Machine is a gritty, hardcore movie, baby, that will get you. And, of course, we forget that Burt made it in every media. Burt was a television star, August.
Yeah.
And then came back to television later in his career. Burt was Evening Shade. Burt was an exceptional director. He made a few goofy movies.
The End. The End is a great movie with Dom DeLuise. That's a great movie. So funny.
And Burt, romantic comedies, Burt action movies, Burt, you name it, Burt Reynolds either performed in one or made one as a filmmaker. In every genre, he was a movie star.
He was. And, Burt is now 80, whatever it is. He's 80, 82, 83.
He's a hard 80. It's a hard 80s for him.
And what Adam Rifkin, whom we've interviewed on this show before, who is a really interesting independent filmmaker. Adam Rifkin is almost a subversive independent filmmaker because he makes movies that seem to be high concept, and then he takes them into these really interesting arty areas. And he does the same thing here. He basically wrote a movie about an aging movie star, starring Burt as the aging movie star, basically playing himself. There are aspects of this character that are different from Burt, his background, where he comes from originally, but there are things that are the same. He played football. Yeah. He had an injury. And what Rifkin does that's so smart is, first of all, there are kind of dream sequences here where he goes and he takes moments from Burt's movies, whether it's Smokey and the Bandit, whether it's Deliverance, and he digitally inserts old Burt into those scenes so that the lines that are being delivered, that were originally being delivered to, whether it was
Jerry Reed or
whoever
the hell it was in.
Whoever Sally Field or Ned Beatty, whoever it was on the other end of those lines. Now he's cut it so that the conversation has a different tenor and it's more meaningful. It's really very clever.
And Bert is giving advice to his younger self.
He is. It's really amazing. It's a very smart film, and it starts kind of on a weird vein where he's invited to a film festival, and it turns out to not really be so much of a film festival. It's just it's like a bunch of nerds in a bar who are showing movies on VHS, and he's just insulted. And but then it turns into this road trip where the guy who organizes the festival, his sister, who wants nothing to do with any of this nonsense, winds up on a very poignant road trip with the character played by Burt Reynolds revisiting his past, and it takes a total left turn in a way very different from what we talked about last week with Paul Thomas Anderson. It's the opposite. It starts off and you go, this movie is sucking, and then it goes and you go, oh man, you set me up. Rifkin totally, he like baited me. And then he went left, and I thought it was going to go right, and now I'm all teary eyed, and it's
really very Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase plays an old buddy.
Yeah, you know, and didn't irritate me, and all of that.
It's very smart.
Father figures, big old comedy. Owen Wilson, Ed Helms, J.K. Simmons, Cat Williams, Terry Bradshaw, Ving Rhames, Christopher Walken, and Glenn Close. Big old movie with a big old cast.
My goodness.
Movie came out, I wasn't looking forward to it, wasn't dreading it, just went to see it. It looked like the big old comedy would be. These two brothers, Owen and Ed, and they find out that their mom was a little loosey-goosey back in the day, and so their dad might not be their dad might be this other guy, including some of those guys I just mentioned. And they go and they take a road trip, to try to figure out the problem with this movie is it's actually pretty funny. But this movie has a conceit at the center of it that bugged me a lot. And it had to do with the sort of way that they talked about their mom in the movie, Glenn Close's character, and the way that she is played in the movie and all of that, which of course has to do with the notion that when she was a young woman, she got around, thus we don't know who our father is. I don't have any problem with that. That's funny to me, but that's just funny. The way they talk about it and the context in which they put it is what I have a problem with. I don't like it. They were talking trash about, Glenn Close's character, quote unquote, their mom. And I don't know. I just don't. You can tell when a movie was written by a bunch of guys, man.
Yeah.
Because I can guarantee you, if one lady, and I know that Glenn is in the movie and everything, but actors are just working, right?
Yeah.
They didn't write the thing; they're just working. If one lady had been in the writing room with them and said, there's a way you can make this exact same movie, everything can happen exactly the way it happens, and if you change the language in it, women won't hate you. But they didn't do it. Anyway, father figures. Not a whole lot on that sucker either.
So, got a movie here called My Friend Dahmer. Directed by Mark Myers. This is an adaptation of a graphic novel, and I know, who would do a graphic novel about Jeffrey Dahmer? So we all remember Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer who, lured young men to his apartment, and then he killed them and chopped them up and froze their body parts and would eat them. And it was and then of course wound up getting killed in prison because even convicts
didn't care for that.
Are going to put up with that.
You're not one of our people.
You're giving us a bad name.
I'm just a bank robber, dude.
I don't eat people, man. The hell's wrong with you? Anyway, so My Friend Dahmer is based on the graphic novel, which is apparently an interesting graphic novel. I'm not familiar with it, but the idea fundamentally is to get inside that moment when Jeffrey Dahmer was in high school and kind of starting to spiral out of control, lose his mind, go off the deep end.
Which, of course, often we forget that Jeffrey Dahmer was insane.
Yes.
We talk about serial killer. Well, he did all that because he was insane.
He's out of his... gone.
Yeah.
Completely gone.
Which this gets at a little bit.
And this gets at that a little bit. Probably not enough. It feels a little too... I don't know. It feels still a little bit too much graphic novel. It needed more grit and less graphic. But it's relatively interesting. The thing that's significant about this, for me at least, is that Ross Lynch, who plays Dahmer, whom I had never seen before and with whom I was not familiar at the time I saw the film, he's a Disney Channel guy. Comes from the Disney Channel, and he is cousins to the brother and sister dancers. Julianne and Derek Huff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're cousins.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, their parents are first cousins, so they are second cousins.
Second cousins, okay.
Right? And it's but you know what family you're dealing with. Like his mom's name is Stormy, right? So Ross Lynch's mom is Stormy Lynch. If your name is Stormy, you come from a funky family. Yeah. No wonder you people are all in these movies. Anyway,
I think we know that.
I saw Ross Lynch in My Friend Dahmer, and I thought, all right, this guy's really working it. He's giving it his all. He's a good dramatic actor. I did not realize at the time he was a Disney Channel guy, and that he was a singing, dancing, Huff cousin, stomping, boy band crazy man, just like everybody else in the family. Until I had to see something for Film Week called Status Update, which was just recently in theaters. And Status Update is an absolutely insipid and totally charming movie about basically it's we'll talk about it more when it comes out on Blu-ray and DVD shortly, which it will. But it's basically like a fantasy in the vein of Big and a little bit of the the old Danny Kaye thing, Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
Little Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
So a guy, he's in high school, he's a new kid, and he winds up getting an app on his phone that makes his wishes come true, and he starts wishing all kinds of stuff, and he becomes super popular and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, Ross Lynch sings and dances like a madman in Status Update. He's just you realize this guy's a total star. That's not what you see in My Friend Dahmer. You see the dramatic side. So I am really kind of fascinated by Ross Lynch. He is only 22 years old, and he's already on the verge of stardom. He's already been on the Disney Channel. I find him really a compelling figure. So, My Friend Dahmer, check it out. Ross Lynch alone is worth checking it out. And then Kickboxer, Retaliation. So this is the reinvention of Kickboxer, and Jean-Claude Van Damme comes back, plays a different character here. He's not the Kickboxer. He's kind of a background. He's a referential figure in the movie. Alam Moussi, who's an actual kickboxer, stars here. And the idea is that you've got it's all centered around when the original Kickboxer came out, mixed martial arts was not a thing. MMA was not a thing. All that stuff had not yet sort of blossomed. So it was leading into that. And now that we're in that, they are taking advantage of that. And you got this. Now you have a case where there's an MMA fighter who's going to go into an underground match against a guy who's just he's like this huge wrecking machine. He's some kind of a hulking behemoth. And Van Damme and Mike Tyson have to train him how to be the guy who can beat the hulking thing. I love it. So Mike Tyson has been really forging a new career in these movies. He's done a number of films in Hong Kong. Yeah. He did one of the Ip Man films as well, and it was really good in it.
Well, you know what I liked about it? It's that Mike got in shape.
Yeah.
Because I was banging around with Mike and Mike had gotten a little soft. You know, he had this wonderful one-man show going on, and he started to get in shape for that. And for these movies, Mike got ripped up. That's Iron Mike Tyson, dude.
But here's the thing. People are talking about how Alam Moussi is, he's a real kickboxer. Let me just take you back to the original Kickboxer. The original Kickboxer that starred Jean-Claude Van Damme. It was a brother story, if people remember it. And Dennis Alexio is the older brother who's supposed to be the badass guy, and then he dies, and then Van Damme's got to, avenge the death of a brother who doesn't have the accent that he has for reasons that are never explained in the movie. So I talk like I'm from Belgium. He talks like he's born in America. We're a little bit like Christopher Nolan and his brother. We were raised by different mother and father. Don't stop it. So anyway. Dennis Alexio, for those who don't know, he's only in the original Kickboxer for a minute before he dies. But Dennis Alexio may be the single most skilled martial artist ever to appear in a movie anywhere, maybe with the exception of Bruce Lee. If you go onto YouTube and look up Dennis Alexio's full contact Muay Thai fights, he is a monster. He murders people. It is unbelievable. He comes out and he just lays into some of the best fighters ever to walk into the ring, and he lays them flat in about 15 seconds. That man was lethal. It is unbelievable. So Dennis Alexio, don't cut him. Don't sell him short. Cut him some slack.
This guy's good.
But Dennis Alexio, the original Kickboxer, is still the best.
I have here an interesting movie to me personally for a couple of reasons. Forever My Girl, cute little movie. Alex Rowe.
This is a good little movie.
It's a cute little movie that didn't, some people might put it in the realm of those faith-based films. I didn't think so, though.
Not
I mean, it is, it's tiny bit, but it's relevant, and frankly, you would have this much mention of religion, notion of religion in any given movie, or television show. So I don't know why you would stick this one in that particular box, but nevertheless, it's okay with me. Yeah. Lovely little movie. It's about a young man who's about to pop as a pop star. He has his girlfriend, and they're going to get married, and the whole thing looks great. But he goes away, and he does in fact become this gigantic pop star, and he never talks to her for about just leaves her cold.
Leaves her cold.
The whole family behind.
The whole family leaves
all behind. And he becomes, when the movie really picks up, he's already a star. One of their friends from high school, it's several years later, about 7 years later, has passed away, and he has to, for the very first time since he just flat out walked away from his life and his girlfriend and all of that, go home and deal with what he did. Now, look, it's not giving anything away to say that when he gets home, that old girlfriend has a little kid that's about the exact one of those, right? There's a lot that I like about this movie, including the performances. This kid can sing and perform, and those songs are lovely, and these are lovely performances, and I love that little girl, and it's just a neat little movie. Now, here's the personal bit for me with this movie. This movie was directed by a woman named Bethany Ashton, whose name now is Bethany Ashton Wolf. Mm-hmm. When I saw that, I was like, Bethany Ashton Wolf, and I went and looked, and I found her. And Bethany Ashton, her debut film as a feature film director was a film called First and Last, in which my wife was the co-star.
No kidding.
With Bethany Ashton. Yes, she was. It was like a Friends sort of. This is 1997. It's not like a Friends kind of like, but it's a movie.
Oh, that's
all great. These people live in a house, and Bridget was the co-star with Bethany in that movie. And Bethany put Bridget in everything she ever did. She directed a whole bunch of plays and short films and all of this.
No kidding.
And they became friends. And Bethany's like, anything I do, you're going to be in. Anyway, so to Bethany Ashton Wolf, good work. I'm glad to see you're still at it, sis.
That's pretty great. That is pretty great. Got some just DVDs here, and the first one is it's a rather unusual movie. It's called Are We Not Cats? And this is really I want to call this I don't know if I want to call this a horror film, even though it is rather horrifying. This is from the very fringy people over at Cleopatra Entertainment, released by MVD. But here's the thing. You got a guy whose life is really, really messed up. He's lost his job. He's been evicted. He's lost his girlfriend, the whole thing. And he becomes a truck driver and meets a woman who, let's see, how do I put this? He and the woman both have the same obsessive fetish, which is they like to pull out their hair and eat it.
Ooh, there's got to be a scientific name for that. I'm almost sure.
Yeah.
If you know the scientific name for that phenomena, send us an email at I don't know.
Yeah. So it is, but in any case, it is. I can't say that this is fun to watch. It has an audio commentary I just did not want to listen to. So if you listen to the audio commentary and you tell me it's worth listening to, maybe I'll revisit. But it just the concept, there's a lot of fast forwarding that goes on. I'll just say that. Then we also have Tiana Taylor and Brashear Gray in Honey, Rise Up and Dance. This is this only the second Honey film, or have there been others?
No, that's the two Honey films. I was confabulating them in my head with those Step Up films.
Step Up, because it's all part of the same world.
Yeah.
Part of the same urban dance thing, yeah. So anyway, the only reason this film exists is for dancing. Yeah, that's it.
Which is good, by the way, in those films.
Oh, it's terrific. Yeah. It's terrific. I mean, this is kind of like the dance equivalent to the a cappella singing stuff that you
Pitch Perfect movies.
The Pitch Perfect movies. You're going to those for the singing. You're looking at this for the dancing, and the plot is completely. They'll make up a reason to make people dance. They just will. Here you're competing for a scholarship, and there's a whole thing. Forget about it. You're just watching some really, really talented kids just put on some great clothes and just dance. And there's some great dancing here. And this includes Movies Anywhere code, so you can add that fancy little bit of dancing to your digital locker.
The Tribes of Palos Verdes, which is a neat little movie with Jennifer Garner in it, Malika Monroe. A neat little movie. Family moves to Palos Verdes, a little surfing community. And the surfing communities can be, intense if for outsiders come there. They have a daughter and a son. The daughter is a bit of an outsider, kind of a freaky little girl who doesn't make friends. Well, the son, he's one of those guys, can always make friends with anybody. Anyway, the daughter, they both sort of like take up surfing. The daughter turns out to be really good at it, but they have to do that thing where they have to, be respected and make their way. And then it's kind of a neat movie. What I like most about it is Jennifer Garner's character. Jennifer decides that she's not taking any crap when it comes to her kids in this movie. And I like the way she moms up.
Yeah.
She moms up real big.
Which she's been doing that for a while, playing really serious moms.
Yeah, and I think that something about her life.
Yeah, for sure.
Taught
we know
her,
that.
you know what? You got to mom the hell up. Tribes of Palos Verdes.
Got a couple from Film Movement here. Both of them really, really good. Film Movement keeps coming up with some really interesting stuff. So, Jasper Jones is an Australian film by Rachel Perkins, based on a novel that apparently was a big deal, and it's a really interesting period mystery kind of coming of age thing. It's been compared, I think, legitimately to Stand By Me. They even put that quote on the cover here, but it's also different. It takes place in 1969. And it's about in a small Australian town, this 14-year-old kid who goes with this other kid to resolve a mystery. And I'll give you nothing else on it, but it's a really, really interesting character piece. The acting is terrific. The writing is really sharp, and where it goes is completely unexpected, and yet at the same time totally perfect. And I don't know who Rachel Perkins is. I am unfamiliar with her any of her work, but what a talented director, and I hope that career blossoms and blooms. She is just really terrific. And then, based on the novel by E. Nesbitt, The Railway Children was a stage production that gets a really interesting DVD release here. That is still very stagey, but it's a really, really charming charming story. It's about these. I don't want to compare it to the. What's the Christmas thing, the Zemeckis thing?
Polar Express. With the dead eyes.
Yeah, I don't want to compare it to that because this is live action and that was mocap and all that. But the idea, the sort of the magical train based metaphor that's going on here is probably in some respects similar. And a little bit of Mary Poppins as well. I think you could probably fold into this. This is about these three kids, these three siblings, whose father goes to prison, and that forces them and their mother to move to this little rural part of Yorkshire, away from their beloved London. And then there's this train and this porter on the train, and then it goes and it becomes very kind of Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe-y. Very Mary Poppins-y at that point. It takes a really interesting. So I think this is charming. I would like to see this done, perhaps as a bigger budget thing. Like really give it the studio treatment. But that said, it's still a sweet story and it's very nicely done.
This movie here, Mohawk, which stars an actual Mohawk, Native American Mohawk young woman whose name is extremely difficult to pronounce. I think it's Kantinthio, K-A-N-I-E.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, Horn is her last name.
Oh my goodness!
She's been in a couple of neat little movies.
Kanyetio.
Because they have those sort of sort of
where you pause and
So it's right there, and I apologize to the young actress for mutilating her name. Not that I don't mutilate a lot of names about it, so don't be too upset, sis. Because what I'm going to say about you is you are one hell of an really this young actress is insanely good. This is a very good movie. I put this movie probably right up in terms of movies about the Old West and Native culture and those conflicts, right up there next to Hostiles, from last year out of Entertainment Studios over there with Christian Bale and all of that. So if you liked Hostiles, which is a much higher profile movie than this, I think that you would like this. The director of this movie also directed a movie called We're Still Here, which is a very good movie. Now, this is the theme of this movie, War of 1812. some American soldiers that burned down the village of this young Mohawk woman. A couple of young men from her village who survived that take vengeance out on those soldiers and burn their thing down.
Wow.
Some renegade soldiers decide they're just going to come after what are really only 3 of this particular village left. It includes this young lady, a Mohawk young man, and a young British man, right? Now, this is where this movie gets really intense. For one thing, the young lady and the 2 men are involved in an affair. It's like a whole 3, but they're all in on it. She's running things, which actually is, if you know about this particular culture, makes total and complete sense. The women had the juju. And the men knew that the women had the juju. And this movie gets so flat out crazy violent because, again, it's one of those movies where where these soldiers decide to come after them in their forest, in their, community. Bad idea. Don't come after me in my house. And this young woman is just amazing in this movie. It's really violent, kind of devastating. Obviously, it's speaking to the dynamic of the culture of the time. That's really what's going on, and that's really the point of all of this violence. It's a moment for the violence to be reversed, a sort of Little Bighorn sort of situation. So anyway, I think I've talked it up enough to get people to go see it. If you don't believe me, pop online and read some of the reviews. This is one of those situations where this is a movie you have never heard of.
Nice.
That's as good as or better than most of the movies that will be in theaters over the next several weeks. Mohawk, really, really good.
All right, we got a bunch of documentaries that have piled up over the last few weeks. I'm gonna plow through as many of them as I can before we get to television and some classic movies and maybe even some foreign if we have a minute or two. Heartworn Highways Revisited is a really interesting doc. If you ever saw the original doc, Heartworn Highways, which goes all the way back into the 1970s. Which was all about the outlaw country movement. This goes back to that. This basically looks at that entire scene from the point of view of contemporary musicians who were influenced by it, and it's good, really interesting. Not exactly my kind of music, I'm not an outlaw country guy, but then again, I wasn't really a Grateful Dead fan, and I sat through that thing for 4 hours and loved it. So good filmmaking will get me over a hump, and this is pretty well done. This was made just last year. And I'm not familiar with any of the people in it, and I'm not particularly interested in the music they're playing, but their stories and their inspirations and their whole scene is very interesting. The Last Religion, the Antichrist Singularity and the Great Deception. This is presumably, I think this is a little more academic than it really needs to be, but this takes a whole bunch of theologians and puts them together and has them analyze the book of Revelation and the whole concept of the last days. It is there are some people here that I'm familiar with, like Hal Lindsey, obviously, and Tim LaHaye. These are people that you will have heard related to kind of a certain part of the evangelical movement. Some of these other people I've never heard of. I find all of this interesting, but it is not exactly. This is very much from the point of view of we're going to try to put together an argument for sort of evangelical paranoia that will persuade the younger generation, and it's a bit of propaganda. There's some interesting stuff here, but it would be nice to get a different perspective, not even necessarily an atheistic perspective, just somebody that says I'm a mainline Christian and I don't really believe any of this stuff, or I have a different take on it. That would have made this a more interesting
from within inside. As a matter of fact, what you do not want is an atheistic perspective. Right? There may be agnostic, but not because something that's a different thing.
Something
you want
more
somebody,
scholarly.
Somebody who's I live in the same world as you. And you're goofy.
I always try to be fair to these things, but I was a history major before I was a film major, and I was a history major with an emphasis on certain. I took all those sort of religious history courses, and the Reformation and the environment of the New Testament and all that stuff, and so I have a pretty good working knowledge of a lot of that stuff, and I like for things to be certainly historically factual. Heart of Sky, Heart of Earth is a rather devastating documentary. This has been celebrated all over the globe, and it is assuming that what is represented here is as nearly apocalyptic as presented. It's very, very depressing. This was shot mainly in Guatemala and surrounding countries, and it's the perspective of a modern day Maya, or the descendants of the Maya. It is their perspective, based on their traditions and the stories that have been handed down to them and their cultural narrative, on what is happening to the earth and to their culture and to the environment that they always revered. And it is very much their point of view. This is not objective, but it's not a polemic either. It's not a political film. It basically says these people and their ancestors had this stewardship, and they feel that it's slipping away. And it's done in a really interesting style. It's really very creative filmmaking and very artful filmmaking. And it has won a number of awards and it's been at all over festivals, especially in Central and South America. It's called Heart of Sky, Heart of Earth. It's really worth a look. And then let me go through the rest of these pretty quickly. Killing for Love, a true story, using the voices of Imogen Poots and Daniel Bruhl to detail a really, really haunting story that took place in 1985 when this couple was found murdered in Virginia in their home, and all the signs eventually pointed to their daughter and her German boyfriend. And it's a horrifying story. It's really upsetting, but it's told in a very, very artful way. In Killing for Love, and again, great voiceover work with Imogen Poots and Daniel Bruhl, who sort of give rise to exactly how this horrible thing happened. Boston documentary, narrated by Matt Damon. Matt Damon. I almost feel like I can't say his name unless I say it Team America style. This is all about the Boston Marathon, and which of course has been tainted a little bit in recent years since the bombing. But this is not about the bombing. This is about the marathon itself, and it's just wonderful and prestigious history. It's a really, really nice documentary. Frank Marshall was one of the producers on this, and it has a really, really beautiful score by Jeff Beal in particular. That's just really wonderful. And this is from First Run Features. Highly recommended, especially if you're a fan of the marathon. But even if you aren't, you'll still love it. The Weight of Honor, Stories of Families After War. This won the Audience Award that's at the San Antonio Film Festival. And it's exactly what you would expect it to be. This is about 9/11 veterans and their caregivers and how they try to put their lives together in the wake of having your lives torn apart. It's inspiring. It's upsetting. But most of all, it's inspiring. Directed by Stephanie Selden Howard. It's a very, very touching film. And let me throw a couple more in here. Let's see. Shadowman from Film Movement by Oren Jacoby is all about Richard Hambleton, who in the 1980s was this kind of renegade underground artist who was part of the same scene as Basquiat and Keith Haring, and but didn't become as famous as his colleagues. But if you've seen any of the Shadowman painting, on subways and on walls, and in any of the places in New York from that period, you will immediately recognize it. It's haunting and it's unmistakable, and it's not like Basquiat and Haring at least did things that sort of captured your imagination. What Hambleton did haunted you. It got inside your nightmares.
More Hieronymus Bosch than
much, definitely. And a lot of it was about his own personal struggles with heroin and everything else. But it's anyway. It's a very, very interesting documentary about a very, very unique artist who hasn't necessarily gotten the same attention as some of the others of his generation. And then Architects of Denial. Boy, this is I don't mean to be really super depressing, but this is basically a look at the it deals with the denial of the Armenian genocide to this very, very day. and what goes on, particularly in Turkey, but in other parts of Central Asia, and how the denial of that event resonates in the ripple effects that take it to this day, and what it has enabled certain bad actors in the world to do with impunity. And we see that still in Syria. So these things are very, very upsetting, but it's really worth watching, because mostly the Armenian genocide movies, the fictional films, have not done a very good job of creating attention for that incident. But
the Ottoman Lieutenant, most recently, I think, was one that.
But documentaries is where that lives. So Architects of Denial, definitely worth looking at. All right, let's do some TV.
Mystery Science Theater 3000, the 11th season, of course, which is the new series.
Yeah.
So it's like season 1 of the 11th season.
This is on Blu-ray.
On Blu-ray,
This is the first time on Blu-ray.
The new stuff with of course, Patton Oswalt now. Taking the place of Joel Hodgson, who created the series. And, of course, you remember the wonderful Mystery Science Theater 3000, taking all those old public domain movies and putting them in this little gizmonic world on the other side of the moon with all of these blah, 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 whatever. It was funny. And I liked it quite a lot. Patton Oswalt, perfect choice.
Yeah.
To sort of pick up the mantle and walk off with all of that. It's still goofy, still funny. The movies behind them are still absolutely outrageous. This includes 14 episodes, 14 of the new episodes. Felicia Day, Patton Oswalt, Jonah Ray, Byron Vaughn, who played Servo, the voice of Byron Vaughn, who played Servo. I know Byron. And Rebecca Hansen. That original series, the Mystery Science Theater 3, the original, believe it or not, that premiered in 1988.
No kidding.
Yes, 1988.
Wow.
Anyway, it's hung around, went away for a while, came back in this 11th season, and now we go again.
Wow.
Yeah, right? Yeah, right?
That's...
I know. Claws. I just want to mention this one because I love it. Niecy Nash's series, Claws, set in a fingernail salon in the Valley. Which, if you live here, this is a thing. I think the San Fernando Valley and parts of Jersey are the most important places for that kind of thing. This is just a really neat, outrageous, just I don't know. It's in Florida. It's nuts. It's hot. It's steamy. It's sexy. These women are completely goofy. Yet they are involved in some really, really serious stuff. It gets treacherous. It involves the mafia, crime bosses, all that kind of stuff. When this show first popped up, I had no idea it was going to be this much fun. To me, this is as fun as anything that's on television. Claws, Niecy Nash.
And then from Acorn TV, we have something really cool called The Accident. This is really actually incredibly well written. So... here's the story. Bruno Solo, who's a really, really good actor. Bruno Solo is a guy who lives with his family, his wife, and his daughter in Brittany, in France. And one day his wife dies in an auto accident, but nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the officials come up with a really ridiculous explanation for it, and they kind of try to brush it off. And he decides he's going to do what every good self-respecting movie hero does. He's going to launch his own investigation.
Yeah, find out what the hell happened to my wife.
That's it.
Because it really is a nice setup though, because it looks like just a thing. There's a little strange, and then they find this bottle of vodka. She didn't drink. We know that. We've been watching. We know that the car is facing the wrong way. It's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. And I love him because he is a man on a rampage.
Yep.
And he's not buying none of this crap.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good.
It's good. It's very good. So that's The Accident from Acorn TV. Definitely worth checking out. Let's talk about some classic movies here and see if maybe we might get to a foreign film or two. I got 4 from the Warner Archive collection. 3 on Blu-ray, 1 on DVD. I'll give you the DVD straight up, the DVD-R. This is Hotel Berlin, which is, not the... Hotel Berlin is what I like to call kind of like a historical artifact. It is more interesting for who did it and who's in it and what it represents contextually in the time than it is necessarily for the film, because it doesn't date very well. It's kind of propaganda-ish. It was made right at the end of the war, 1945. It's sort of like second tier Casablanca in some respects. It's all
kind
about
of movie where Peter Lorre is like the fifth man down.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a great cast. Peter Lorre, Raymond Massey, Andrea King is really wonderful in it. And it has a fantastic Franz Waxman score. I don't think Waxman ever wrote a bad score, so that distinguishes it to some degree. Otherwise, it's all the kind of World War II spy shenanigans and theatrics in it. It feels a little bit almost as though I don't want to say it trivializes anything related to the war. It just doesn't hit it as hard as we hit it now in hindsight. It was right at that moment when you didn't have quite as much perspective. But again, as a historical artifact, it is an interesting film. The 3 on Blu-ray are all really terrific, absolutely terrific ones. They all are historically really, really significant, and I'm so impressed by the way that the Warner Archive keeps kind of finding these great little gems. The first one is a stop motion classic. It is The Black Scorpion.
Yeah.
This is one of the all-time great stop motion masterpieces. That scorpion is animated to the ends of the earth. Yeah, it's a giant scorpion. It's a movie about a giant scorpion. I don't care what the plot is. It's a stop motion animated giant scorpion, and they worked their butts off. It is just really, 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 really impressive. And you could fast forward from one section to the next, just watch the scorpion. Forget about the story. The scorpion is really great. The others involved in this film, not really distinguished people for any great reason. Edward Ludwig, who directed it, not anyone whose name you're necessarily going to remember. But boy, I'll tell you, the animation of that scorpion is tremendous. Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with Dana Andrews and Joan Fontaine is a really, really great noir. It's a distinguished noir. It was directed by Fritz Lang. It was one of his American Hollywood films. So he brings, obviously, the expressionistic impulse that inspired noir to this and really, really gives it kind of a high art gloss. It's it's Hitchcockian in some respects. The idea of these ordinary people caught in this web of events. But it's really, really slick. It's unheralded. Fritz Lang did a lot of good work here on excuse me. Fritz Lang did a lot of good work here, and this is one of the best ones made for RKO back in the day. And then the last one might be my favorite of all of these, also with Dana Andrews. This is While the City Sleeps. Unbelievable all-star cast in this thing. Dana Andrews, Rhonda Fleming, who would go on to marry Ted Mann of Mann Theater fame. I met them many times when I worked at Mann Theaters. George Sanders, Vincent Price, Howard Duff, Ida Lupino. Really, really a terrific bunch of people. Ida Lupino is so good in this thing. It's just really wonderful to watch. This also directed by Fritz Lang from the exact same period. And this is an even better crime film. It's not as Hitchcockian, but it is much more in his vein. It's kind of going back to his roots with M and things like that. Dealing with the lipstick killer. Who's going to catch the lipstick killer? It's really, really a lot of fun. It's very well written. The screenplay by Casey Robinson is just absolutely terrific. And Vincent Price is at his level best. An absolutely delightful film. While the City Sleeps.
This film here, Roger Donaldson's Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah.
Which gave us Sam Neill. It more or less kickstarted the whole new wave. Down on the new wave from down on New Zealand, Aussie new wave. This film was a revenge film to a certain extent, but basically what it involved is Warren Oates in this film. Sam Neill is this guy. He's kind of like a recluse of these lefty sort of guerrillas, just government, and he gets drawn into this thing. He doesn't really want to have anything to do with any of them, but he ends up looking like a gorilla, and he looks like he did. So he has to get a gun and do his thing. That kind of movie. I think this film was about 1977, yeah. I thought it was early, but 1977. That kind of movie, this movie launched that whole sort of thing, that Australian outback with the man with a gun and all that kind of stuff. Neat stuff. Roger Donaldson, of course, all kinds of fantastic movies that he went on to make. This is full of all kinds of special edition content. This is a special edition. The film itself, it's a high definition Blu-ray presentation. This is the best this film has ever looked in more than 40 years. And there is also a 65-minute retrospective documentary about this film's production and the whole new wave and Roger Donaldson and what he's done.
It's great.
Just good stuff.
Kino went and got a couple of really cool old artifactual Western-ish movies. I say Western-ish because they're not really Westerns. They're singing cowboy movies. Singing cowboy is like a genre of the Western. But these are from the Paramount Library. They've been remastered and scanned in 4K and given a whole new sterling look from the original nitrate negatives. The first one, they're both the same genre, I should point out. But the first one is Trigger Jr.
Yeah,
Trigger Jr. Within no other than Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Now, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, if you don't know the whole singing cowboy genre, you have to understand that this is something that is very specific to the United States.
Yeah.
It included, Gene Autry and a few others. And I don't know where it began, but the idea that you have, cowboys that break out into song and...
Singing cowboys.
I don't know. It's always been a strange thing to me, and I've never particularly liked any of these movies. But there is, again, kind of an artifactual sheen to them where you watch it and you just think, okay, well, I get it. Trigger, of course, is his horse, and Trigger Jr. Well, you can do the math yourself. You're really watching this just because of the stars. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans are quite charming. And then the other film is a less known singing cowboy, Vaughn Monroe. The name and they put Walter Brennan in this thing just so that they have some Western cred, right? Somebody who's an actual, who actually can kind of hold down the period and convince you. Vaughn Monroe has completely disappeared from the landscape. Nobody remembers him. He's the singing cowboy that has been completely forgotten. But this is just such a weird movie. Made by Republic, who of course made all these westerns at the time. They made Trigger Jr. as well. Vaughn Monroe has a lovely voice, but he can't act, man. No. He can't act. And there's no other reason to watch this other than his singing. When he's not singing, you might as well just turn it off. It's very, very silly. And then, it has a whole romance with a saloon girl and a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Nothing much interesting there. These films, if you are a fan of the genre, are both on Blu-ray from Kino, and they both have audio commentary by Toby Rohn, whose name may be known to you because of the Rohn Group, which has done a lot of archival stuff in the past. So interesting audio commentary.
I just have this one lovely Criterion collection of The Awful Truth here. The Awful Truth being the film that gave us Cary Grant in that very particular Top Hat and Tails persona. This is the film that came. Irene Dunne, Cary Grant, and the Leo McCarey film, and obviously slapstick and sort of improvisation and that sort of fast talking. This is about 1937 or so. 1937. And aside from giving us Cary and Irene Dunne, the neat thing about this movie is the awful truth in it. Is that they're in love. I love it. Great stuff.
Good. And lastly, before we head out, I want to make a mention of a book called Buster Keaton in His Own Time. This is from film historian Wes Geering, who is a professor of film at Ball State. And he's gone back and basically compiled a book based on what critics from the 1920s said about Buster Keaton. And it's really interesting. If you're a fan of silent cinema, and he is, Geering is a scholar of silent cinema and the period, you'll find it really fascinating. Especially as a critic looking at this, I was like, makes me wonder, shouldn't I go back and reevaluate some of the things I said at the time? And you think some of these critics would probably want to go back and revisit some of the things they said, both positive and negative. Yeah. It's a really interesting book. It's worth checking out, especially if you're a Keaton fan. Buster Keaton in His Own Time by Wes D. Geering. And that is from McFarland is the publisher. And you can go to McFarlandPub.com, or you can order it online at the phone number that you find there. So McFarlandPub.com for Buster Keaton in His Own Time. See you guys next week.
Yeah. Have you ever? Was you or Mark that had the great crazy Ken Russell story?
Oh yeah, we've told it on this show before.
Told it? Okay, good.
We've told it before. We'll lay off anyway. That is it for this week. We'll see you guys next week. Send us emails with Croft for the Lara Croft Tomb Raider 4K giveaway in the subject line. Get it to us by the 30th. And Damon, Damon, to win one of the 2 4K packs for downsizing to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com by the 30th. See you next week.